oh, hell no. What the hell is she talking about? Consciousness can feel so expansive, so like disembodied that we are awakening and more aware of the world than any other point in history. We are more alien. I know I took you on a long journey to get here. This is where this conversation about embodiment comes in for me. Welcome to the We Heal for All podcast. I'm Liz Moyer Ben-Ferhat. This is a space and a place all about collective healing. So really this question of how do we have a healthier, more generative relationship with the world these days? The good, the bad, the ugly. And what types of spiritual and emotional support and tools, but also capacities and ways of being does this task invite us into? So what I do here in these episodes, in these videos, in these audio offerings is share some of the ways that I personally have been thinking about and continue to think about and practice collective healing. Pulling from what we know about how emotions work in the mind and body, pulling from wisdom traditions and consciousness development to really help us understand the shifts that are going on in the world these days and how those shifts are showing up for us as individuals in our minds and bodies. And then connecting that back outward to the culture change and the systems change and just this moment of social and political, environmental, economic transformation that we're in so that we can really actualize stuff within that. So what I want to do here today, I'm doing something a little bit differently. So what I do each month is I meditate on a theme. So last month's theme was not knowing. The theme before that was around the bigness of the times and the layers held within it, intergenerational, historical. And this month's theme for me is on embodiment. Embodiment. What is embodiment? And it's tied to consciousness shifts and therefore culture change. So there's a lot to unpack and play with within that. And that's what I am creating space to do here today in this little space. But typically what I do is I will organize my thoughts because this work is bridge work, right? It's connecting dots between the micro intrapersonal all the way out to the macro systemic. So it helps me a lot of times to organize my thinking, and then I will write an essay and then read it. I'll read it, I'll riff on it, but that's really how I have been approaching these podcast episodes, in particular this reflection piece here. Because what I do is I put out a reflection, I put out a practice, and then I put out a conversation with a beloved friend. But I wanted to do something a little differently. I want to play with a different way of approaching this reflection process, this reflection piece, and come at it loose, fast and casual. No, I just wanted to try and play with actually reverse engineering the process and just coming to you live, quote unquote, even though it's not live, but coming to you in process, half baked, and just seeing what comes through. So welcome. If this is your first time here, it would mean a lot to me if you gave this project a little love, if you feel connected to it, of course, if you're on Substack, giving it a little heart. If you're finding me on YouTube, you can give it a little like or subscribe on any of these channels. Because really at the heart of this work is around building community and connecting with others, connecting with each other, and co-creating wisdom about these times. I am but one tiny voice in a vast sea of wise vantage points. And so I would love to come together with your unique pearl and make some magic. So without further ado, let's get into this topic here of embodiment and consciousness shifts. And you know, it's funny, even as I say the word consciousness shifts, a little tightening happens in my chest. I actually tend to shy away from the word consciousness shifts. I mean, not really. In my book, I go into it in depth, but I find that leading with consciousness as the entry point or the topic, it definitely speaks to and resonates with some people. And if that is you, welcome. It is totally, it totally resonates with me. And I think for many other people, it can feel super lofty and maybe even intimidating and ungrounded, right? It's like consciousness shifts. What are you talking about? What does that even mean? It feels very outer spacey or very, I was going to say woo woo, but I feel like it feels much more cosmic than woo woo for me. And so I tend to shy away from it. But really, when I'm talking about consciousness shifts, and I'm talking about consciousness more generally, I like to root it for myself and in the ways that I use it in the definition of it being our awareness. It is, you know, us as humans, we have the unique capacity, like a unique quality to us that's different than our fellow dog friends or our fellow monkey friends, is our ability to be aware of ourselves, right? That capacity to turn inward and turn our gaze inward to notice what we notice within ourselves, really having that observational self. And so this awareness, right, if we want to just kind of chalk it up to that, extends beyond even our awareness of just, you know, my self as a human right here. And it also extends to myself as a social creature in this world, right? It extends to my awareness of the room that I'm in, and that room being part of an apartment, that's part of a house, that's part of a neighborhood, that's part of a city, and so on and so on and so forth, right? Our conscious awareness is also social in nature. And so I was going to say, I trip out a lot on this expansive awareness that we have these days. You know, when I say trip out, I mean, it just takes me to really cool places. I marvel at it, right? I marvel at our ability to, and especially these days, right, where we really can travel across different dimensions of experience and reality and just travel this world of ours and get to know this world of ours and all the different nooks and crannies and bits and bobs that are out there in a way that no point in history before us has been able to do. And so I feel so much in that. I feel so much excitement. I feel so much possibility. I feel so much newness and change. And with newness and change comes rupture and confusion, disorientation. And so, you know, I think a lot of times about how every point in history has been full of challenges. We want to just kind of use a neutral catch-all term to sum up breakdown or crisis or war or injustice or, unhealthy behaviors and patterns baked into the cultural makeup and the systemic operations of a society. Like, we are not new in that regards, and in that way, it's kind of nice to think about that, right? It's kind of a little bit, at least within some of my more panic-filled moments, actually take about the current circumstances that we find ourselves in right now. And I'm speaking in particular for myself here in the US context. It is helpful to zoom out. I find it helpful to zoom out and take a historical lens. All that said, what is really unique to us right now is our awareness of it all, is the front row center seat that we have to it all. This up close and personal, in our face, searing into our eyes experience that we have with the injustices and the state violence and the wars, among all the rest. So with this, in our face view of the world, comes a much more up close and personal relationship with it. And it comes with it a bunch of internal disruption. So I don't know if you personally identify as being somebody who is on a journey of spiritual development. Maybe spiritual development isn't the term that you would use. Maybe it's personal development, personal growth, personal healing. Maybe it is actually consciousness development. Maybe you are interested in and explore your own consciousness and your own consciousness development through practices like meditation and yoga, or even through faith-based practices. If you have dipped your toe in any type of journey of self-discovery, journey of deepening and developing oneself, then it is full of challenges, right? It is full of definitely those aha moments and those bliss-filled, heart-opening, like euphoric moments, right? Because with each step that we take, with each experience that we have within our own personal development, healing, spiritual development, consciousness development process, comes opening to new senses of self, right? I don't really love the levels terminology because it feels very, hierarchical. But new dimensions of self, right? New levels of what's possible. I'll just use that word. And so of course that comes with like excitement and opening. And then alongside that process too, also comes like when we wake up to what's possible within ourselves, we also wake up to what needs to be cleaned up and needs to be dealt with, right? All of the old, dusty parts of ourselves that maybe this awakening experience is actually giving us new capacity to be able to look at. Or maybe it's actually grieving, right? Now we know a new type of love, right? Maybe within our journey and our awakening process, we actually know love in a new way, right? Whether it's self-love or love in a friendship or in a partnership with a family member. And that then puts a sharp focus on how that absence of love has been present in our lives, right? And so with that comes grief. The need to grieve times in the past or ways that it's not universal in your present. And so I think about all of this that comes with awareness, that comes with awakening, that comes with development. development of self. And I think about these things and apply it to what's going on for us as a collective, what's going on for us as a social body these days, as a society. I'm even taking a breath with that. Because with all of this seeing, with all of this awareness, this expanded awareness, is coming so much heartbreak and disorientation. Our conscious awareness of ourselves as a system, even thinking in terms of systems, understanding the interconnectedness between all these things, is bringing with it a new kind of social consciousness, right? That conscious awareness of self as social being, the conscious awareness of the cultural body that I am part of and that I am co-creating, the conscious awareness of the larger system that I'm operating in. All of that is its own type of awakening. In this day and age when so many of us are really flooded by what comes with that conscious awareness, really flooded by what we see and what we feel from the world around us, from the news cycle, from the lunacy in DC. That experience is a lot to hold, right? That experience of pain that we feel from the world, pain that we feel from things being so different than what we would hope for, than what we know is possible. So different from our values, so different from our visions, so different from what we want for ourselves and for our kids and for our grandkids. Taking another breath here. And so this is where this conversation about embodiment comes in for me. It is within this thesis, if you will, that's alive for me. This thesis of, all right, we live at a time of awakening. Just do purely, we can even take it out of the kind of spiritual or more kind of even esoteric framings of awakening and just even ground it in this age of awareness tied to media. You know what I'm saying? If we really just want to ground it in a sociological frame, we can say just this age of awareness tied to the media tools and the fact that we just got all these videos and platforms and just news outlets pumping stuff, right? That we are awakening and more aware of the world than any other point in history. And so within that, right, within that reality, which is our reality to hold and own and explore and figure out together right now, there is an opportunity for us to embed a new kind of social consciousness into our collective body. It makes me think about the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, and how part of the abolition of slavery, which was a long, bloody process, but part of that process, or a key, what do I even want to say, puzzle piece, vector that came into play to really move that process forward, is the advancements in media technology during the 18th and 19th centuries, right? In particular, the printing press. The printing press, the rise in literacy rates, newspapers being able to share stories and get advocates' voices and views out there in a way that had never been done before, or that they weren't able to do, these advocates for abolishing slavery, or even getting out stories from enslaved people, for people to understand what the conditions that people were living in, right? It opened eyes in ways that prior to this kind of explosion of cheap print just wasn't happening. And so, of course, it wasn't like A plus B equals C type of thing, right? Because the newspaper was also used as a platform for, pro-slavery views too, right? But it gave a platform for ideas to be debated and for realities to be more clearly seen by people in mass. And so here we are, in so many respects, the beginning of a new technological era, a new era of media, where in mass, so many more of us have our eyes open to realities that we were asleep to not too long ago. And so it's this question of how many minds and hearts need to be changed, or how many minds and I'm going to run with that one first and then come back. How many minds and hearts need to be changed before that then gets embedded into society, before that then translates into policy change, and even more, policy change, and I'll just put a pin there. And then I think even more relevant to everyday people, right? Because that's really so much where this is happening. It's for us everyday people who are living our lives and trying to just get our kids to school and eat healthy and just, have a good quality of life, where this new awareness is smacking us upside our faces, right? And it's okay, whoa, so many more of us are being, I'm going to use the gentle word of invited into this new conscious awareness of the world, but it's being forced on so many people and forced on us, right? And so, yes, policy change, and then also culture change, which all interconnects with each other, right? But how many minds and hearts how many eyes need to be opened for things to change? And so let's just play with that equation right there. How many eyes need to open before things change? And I actually want to then take that a bit further and deconstruct that. Because even that phrasing right there, how many eyes need to see before things can change, really harkens and just reverberates in my own mind, in my own experiences, as being a very status quo way of thinking about social change. So my background is in international development, sustainable development, and social impact. So think the UN, think international nonprofits, US nonprofits. And so my bread and butter, professionally speaking, is within the field of social change, community organizing, advocacy campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. And Renée Lertzman, Dr. Renée Lertzman, recently put out a piece. She is a researcher turned practitioner who really is such a just strong, shining light, and so solid in her just bringing forward or having conversations even about the inner dimension of outer change. But she had a piece recently where she was also pointing to how the status quo way of thinking about social change within the field, within this, social change public sector, if you will, is very externally driven, right? It's very much about, and this has been my experience too, it's very much assumes that, people don't care. And so we need to make them care, right? People don't see, and so we need to make them see. And once they see, then they will do, which is just riddled. They will do what we want them to do, right? Whatever kind of behavior change outcome the program, or again the advocacy campaign is banking on. And all of this is riddled with issues, right? And maybe I'll even link her most recent piece to this here, because it does such a great job of just breaking down the lack of hubris in that, right? The lack of humility in that. But what is in there, right? So how many eyes need to see in order for things to change? And her analysis really rings true with my analysis as well. And it's that, not that more people need to see, right? Because we are seeing plenty now. That actually even brings little tears into my eyes. We are almost seeing too much, right? And so it's less about more people seeing in order to do. And it's about supporting us, supporting each other with what comes with seeing. What comes from all of the witnessing, all of the consumption, right? And when I say consumption, I mean taking in others, taking in information, taking in other people's stories, taking in realities that, and trying to wrap our heads around realities on the other side of the world. What comes with seeing? And what comes with seeing is a lot of very normal, complicated, heavy, challenging sets of internal experiences. Whether it is just straight up emotional pain, really witnessing and seeing, and in some cases, for some of us who are particularly empathic and sensitive, it's also absorbing, right? Absorbing what's going on, absorbing the pain of others. And then in other ways, it is deep moral grappling. Who am I to live such a relatively comfortable life when others are in such dire situations? Here I am on a computer with lights on, using the internet, when the livability of the planet is on the line for my grandkids, for my kids. There's a lot of really deep, complicated stuff that comes with having a more intimate relationship with the world, that comes with all of this seeing. And so if part of the opportunity here in this unique moment that we're at in history, this unique moment that we're at in our civilization's life cycle, and again, I'll just root that into the US, but it's not limited to the US, right? This age of awareness is global. So if part of the opportunity here is embedding a new type of social consciousness into society and into us as a collective body, then the question is not whether we need to see more. It's about how do we support the seeing? How do we actually stabilize that consciousness? Actually help it take root and help it take form and help it actually, I'm getting this image of, because again, consciousness can feel so like so expansive, so like disembodied, right? And so how do we actually help it kind of take its tendrils and like weave itself down through us and into the world around us? And this is where, I know I took you on a long journey to get here, but this is where this conversation about embodiment comes in for me, right? And so embodiment, when I was, chewing on and kind of thinking about this puzzle of topics that I wanted to play with here and reflect on, embodiment, and I'm going to give you a definition for it in a second, or at least, do a little table setting for the way that I want to bring it in here. But embodiment to me feels like such a modern term, and not that like embodiment as a thing is new, but it's more like the fact that we need to name it in like that we need to like build our capacity for embodiment. Okay, it feels very modern. It feels like it's so okay. Let me actually just do a little more table setting and then I'll circle back to that. But embodiment really, and Dr. Ray Johnson, they have a book called Embodied Activism. And I'll also link this piece in the show notes or accompanying text to this. They have a piece out that was recently said embodiment is not self-care, right? Embodiment sometimes gets looped into the self-care conversation as something that's meant to soothe, that's meant to, be part of putting cucumbers on our eyes and resting. And maybe it is that for some people at some times, and I'm not knocking that. But really embodiment and the definition that they offer, and I'm not recalling it verbatim right now, but it is building our capacity to be with sensations. Building our capacity to be with the sensations that are happening in our body. And in particular, and I believe that Dr. Johnson includes this in their piece, but I'll just explicitly make the tie to building our capacity to be with sensations in our body tied to emotional experiences or moral experiences or spiritual experiences. That's the definition of embodiment that I want to play with and bring here and play with you. So, and the reason why then circling back to this term embodiment, or more needing to have a conversation about embodiment, needing to be like, hey, y'all, we need this capacity. Hey, y'all, this is a capacity that we can actually develop for ourselves. Feels very modern to me because, and these are all just assumptions, but I'm thinking back in the day, and again, what do I even mean by that? I mean, honestly, I'm getting like flashes to like caveman era type stuff. So, what I'm going to say here might be quasi ahistorical, but I think you'll be along for the ride and agree with me on it. Civilizations in the past that had to rely on the land, that had to rely on the seasons, more indigenous ways of being in this world, which indigenous to all people, was more tied to the earth, right? Was more body-based inherently because you had to be able to sense if danger was lurking around the corner. If you were about to be a saber-toothed tiger's lunch, right? That kind of embodiment, that kind of, where is your attention, right? My attention is in my body, was just something that was more needed back in the day. Now, again, even in this conversation about consciousness, but in this age of the internet, this age of service provision as being, or like intellectual services as being such a big part of our economy and the types of jobs people do, this age of ideas, right? We are more alien. Again, thinking about the pictures of, small body, big head aliens. And so it feels very modern, like a very modern need to remind each other that when we are embodied beings. Our minds are embodied. Our mind and our conscious awareness lives all throughout our body. And so when it comes to stabilizing consciousness, stabilizing a new form of social consciousness that is awakening in our society as we speak. It is awakening in our cultural body as we speak. It requires us to build our capacity for really complicated feelings and sensations that come with that. And so for me, with conversations about consciousness, the things that bring that down to earth for me, that actually takes it out of the kind of meta-narrative, metaphysical even space, which again, I'm so down for. Like, we all need to take a break from the earth sometimes and just travel up into outer space and dream and hallucinate and whatever. I'm not totally knocking that. What I am advocating for, though, is bringing insights from our medicine journeys, bringing insights from our contemplative practices, bringing insights from our expansive views, and integrating them, bringing them down to earth and integrating them into our lives, and therefore bringing them into the way that we co-create the world around us, co-create the culture around us, co-create what it means to be human these days, what it means to be a good neighbor, what it means to be political. There are a lot of really big questions that are up for grabs right now. And the link between, I want to say, the vehicle for bringing shifts in consciousness down to earth is healing. It's healing and it's embodiment. Embodiment and healing go hand in hand. And in particular, the type of healing that I am thinking about and referencing here is body-based healing. It's understanding how emotions work in the mind and body. And our emotions at its core are a bunch of physiological sensations in our body that is giving us information and cues about our environment and about our needs, about what we need in order to survive at its base, as well as what we need to thrive, to adapt, to flourish. And so tying this all back to just the possibility, the opportunity that comes with this age of awareness, this time of awakening, it really is in working with the many normal feelings, the many normal inner grapplings that come with seeing, with having our eyes so open, and building our capacity to be with the sensations, building our capacity to be with complexity so that we can unearth wisdom within what we feel. So when those pieces of gold that are baked in the confusion, that are buried in the pain, that give us more insight about what our values are, what our changing morals are. And not even necessarily that your morals may be changing, but maybe they're just now in a new context. And so these questions of how do I live these principles of mine in this new context, with this new information, with these new insights. So I'm just taking a breath here as I let that land for me. How the more that we can be in practices of embodiment, of not just letting what's happening in the world sweep us up and have us fly away, but actually creating space in our lives, creating intentional and constructive space, ideally with another, at least, or in a community setting with a group of people. But, sometimes that's not available. So even just on our own, creating space for what we are feeling and sensing, and really using all of these amazing tools from the field of trauma studies that we have available to us too. The field of trauma studies that helps us understand that if we take in too much too fast, it overwhelms our system, right? So we learn to take bite-sized pieces. We learn to titrate what we take in order to help build our window of tolerance, or even actually learn what our window of tolerance is. Where are my edges within this work of having a deeper relationship with the world, with this work of ushering in a new kind of social consciousness? There's a very alive process to all of this. There's an aliveness that I think conversations about social change and conversations about surviving the times that we're in sometimes miss. As heartbreaking and heavy as everything is, there's also a real opportunity to usher something new in and to be in this alive dance with it all. To let the times change you and shape you, and to have a type of conscious awareness of the fact that you are being changed and shaped, that you shepherd and steer, and that you say yes to. You say yes to from your spiritual self, from the part of you that knows and senses that you are here on planet Earth. You are part of this world. You are part of all that's happening right now for a reason. Even if that part of you is hard to hear sometimes. Connecting with that part of yourself and letting it lead you in the choices and decisions that you make about how you tango with what's here. So often when I talk about collective healing and when I talk about this work, which is what I'm talking about here, this is all rooted in how I understand collective healing and the opportunity that comes with collective healing for these times that we live in. I feel compelled to need to tie it to some kind of tangible action. I think it just goes back to the culture that I live in, the culture of social change that I come from and am part of, and then also just we love a good result, right? We are a results-based society. If you can't manage it, then you can't measure. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So if it's not a tangible outcome of somebody volunteering more or voting more, or then what's the point, kind of a thing. But there is more. Yes, everything that I'm talking about here does translate into action. But I think rushing to the action actually really misses the point. All of this work here, whether it is dancing with your awareness of the world, or it's creating intentional space to build your capacity to be with it, or it's sitting in the fire of the questions that come about what this means for you and your life. All of those actually lead to stuff that's much more subtle, that's much harder to put a pin in and shine a light on, because it's about your inner world and your inner posture and your inner sense of self and your inner sense of the world that you're part of in this time, your inner sense of history in this point in time. That again, it translates into how you show up, how you hold yourself, how you walk. And it shows up even more so in those really micro moments of noticing your heart racing a lot in the midst of someone pushing back on you about your beliefs. Or being able to be with the feelings of disgust that come up for you in a conflict-based setting and not collapsing, not turning away. Instead, staying curious, maybe even staying humble. It's subtle. It turns into the types of stories that you tell your kids. And even if it's the same characters as you did prior, maybe there's a slightly new energy underneath it all. So as much as, and this is just society, right? As much as there's a part of me that feels compelled to try to sell you on some kind of hard and fast outcome, Marketing 101 tells me to, I'm not going to. Because all of this is realer than that. The kinds of shifts that I'm speaking about right now and that I am feeling in my body and my heart and my mind, and therefore speaking from, can't be reduced to just the output of the action. And so I'm feeling like this is a nice place to pause and bring this to a close. If you are still with me, thank you. Thank you. It's really nice to be here with you. And I would really love to know what spoke to you within this. What parts of this resonated, and also equally what parts didn't. Because all I know is that we are here together for a reason, to learn together, to co-learn, to co-create, to co-generate. And what I have to offer here isn't meant to resonate 100% with every single person. And the invitation then is that I like to extend to people is to use that as a springboard to deepen your own understanding of yourself, your own understanding of if there is a part of this that just didn't land for you and you're like, I don't know, that just doesn't feel right to me, or nah, or maybe it was even a bigger, like more like repulsion, like, oh, hell no, what the hell is she talking about? That's awesome. Use that as a springboard to deepen your own understanding of yourself, of what your unique beliefs are. Get curious about why that is coming up for you, and then help all of that, then, use all of that to deepen and get a clearer sense of what your role is here during these times. 100% support that, and I love that. All right, I'm taking a deep breath. Thank you so much for being here and for being you and for being here during this time. Because I believe it for a reason. All right, sending you a big hug from my home here in the Bronx to wherever and however you are right now. Let's connect. Take care. Thank you to you and your heart and for being here. If you enjoyed this episode and received from it, send it to a friend and use it as a way to build community and connection that this world deeply needs right now. Subscribe to tune in each week for more tools, conversations, and support on collective healing. And check out my latest book, When the World Hurts, upcoming circles, and online courses to go deeper. Sending you love from the Bronx. Take care.